I'm pulling the trigger. I'm starting a few seconds early here. All right. So it's funny. A while ago, Mike had the TRSLmania event, and he was talking about and he said at the beginning, he was just making a joke. He was saying, all right, so we're going to have 3 hours of an optics debate. And then after the optics debate, we're going to have an arena over there set up where people can infight. And he was just making a joke. But the thing is, that's like literally me. That's like literally what I do here. So anyway, Sean, Richard Spencer said something that was very interesting. He said that before Charlottesville,
Yeah.
that the alt-right was bulking. It was like bulking up. And then after Charlottesville, now we're sort of cutting. We're sort of cutting the fat after Charlottesville. What do you think about that? Do you think that's a good description of what happened? It's like a bodybuilder building up mass, and then he's like cutting the fat, and now he's like now we're like this lean machine after Charlottesville, after getting all the fat cut from Charlottesville.
Well, seems a little bit of a strained analogy. I'm not sure that the all that cutting is actually necessary, and I'm not sure if Richard Spencer is considering himself part of the lean muscle mass or the fat that's getting cut.
Yeah, it's great. The thing is, I saw the Michigan State event, and I saw, wow, they were getting pretty lean there. We were really cutting a lot there. I think there were like 10 people in the crowd. Yeah, it's got some good cutting going on. So it's funny because we have these people. They were talking about it's like we're like the Wizards, you know, because there was like years ago, back in 2015, 2016, got these guys. They're finally coming around to stuff that we've been saying like way back. We've been saying, you know, don't do live events. You know, don't talk about just don't talk about Jews. And there's reasons why. Like even if everything Mike says about Jews and everything, you know, let's say even if Kevin McDonald is like totally correct about Jews and everything, it's like don't talk about Jews, and also like, and of course the whole Nazi stuff. But it's like I don't know, like why does it take this long for so many people to have figured this stuff out? Like why do you think? Why do you think, Sean?
It's a weird thing because it's not as if, I mean, a lot of the problems which have been discovered in the most painful way imaginable seemingly were eminently predictable. And that's evidenced by the fact that people literally predicted them. And yet, I don't know. Like, it seems very strange to me. I think it has to do with just a lot of it just boils down to stuff people want to do because it's like exciting and fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, oh no, we're gonna like you know, the fucking leftists control the public perception of everything because they control the media, and we're gonna go out and we're gonna do a public event, and in fact, we're gonna invite those said media, and they're gonna have their cameras, and they're gonna follow us around, and you know what could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong? Hey, let's have an event. Like it's almost like, you know, I'm gonna have a presentation, sort of a live event, and then I'm gonna have the Young Turks describe this presentation to everyone. Like or like let's have ContraPoints describe my presentation to everyone. It's like it'll be great because I'll be on a big platform. So I don't know. So where did we want to go? Where do we want to talk with this? Because I started thinking about this more because of the Baked Alaska stuff. And I mean, that's just like a whole thing we could go into. But I'm just thinking about like,
I mean, it's pretty amazing. Like,
yeah, it's pretty amazing. Stuff. But I'll just set it before getting into Baked Alaska stuff. It's like, so here's the great people that were trying to be united at Unite the Right. This is the right that was being united. It was Chris Cantwell was part of the right to be united. Heimbach was part of the right to be united. Baked Alaska was part of, so it's like all these Unite the Right people. It's like, oh, how did they turn out? It was amazing. It's almost, and the thing is, I don't know, way back, like I just sort of saw Chris Cantwell back when he was doing the radical agenda. I think maybe he's still doing it, but it's not like the libertarian thing that it was. And I don't know, I sort of just saw the guy and I thought this guy is like, there's like something off with this guy. Just like the way his eyes looked and the way he moves and manners. It's sort of like that book Blink, or whatever, where you have like an immediate perception of someone from like very little information about them. I just heard
Yeah, I
another
mean
very
there were
negative view,
also there were
negative
also
perception of Cantwell back then. But,
some other very subtle hints that Cantwell might have some be a somewhat problematic individual. Things like abusing meth or getting in trouble with the police for running around with guns and stuff like that. Little hints that maybe
little,
could have hinted somewhat at the idea that
sure.
that inviting him into this is going to be a problem.
Right, but like I wasn't even like I didn't even know about any of that. I just remember like seeing him on like a live video stream. I think he had his shirt off. That may be another hint, but anyway. Um, so this Baked Alaska stuff. So people are saying that Baked Alaska was he moved to Los Angeles and he made some new friends in Los Angeles. So what do you think about that? Do you think that was a good move?
Well, the impetus behind him moving to Los Angeles is that Baked Alaska wanted to, move away from the internet and do more real stuff. And he was talking with Medicare, and he was saying, what have you done in real life, Medicare? Where have you showed up? And it's like, dude, like it's just, I mean, this is a symptom of a much larger, fairly, ubiquitous, retarded meme that somehow if you it just doesn't make, I mean, it's so dumb on so many levels. Obviously, convincing people is convincing people. It's easier to do online than it is in person, in like every way imaginable. It is not like the reason why you want to go do things in person is not because you sat down and autistically reasoned out that this is the best strategic thing to do. It's because you want to LARP as like a warrior and a champion or something like that. It's to get off psychologically.
But you know what else I'm thinking? I'm not exactly sure that being in a LA is even going to help you do stuff in real life. Because like, let's say like you go to some like freaking town in the middle of Alaska, and it's like, hey, I really think you could get something of a captive audience if you go to some town like out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. They might just be interested in hear you speak just because like there's literally nothing else going on, right? It's like, hey, there's some guy from somewhere. He's coming to our little, ice town or whatever, our little snow dugout, and he's gonna talk to 10 people about the glories of racism, and that's sort of the way it should be. Because I was sort of thinking about like, if you were going to do real world activism, what would you try to do? And I was thinking, well, like for example, I just to see, I went to the website for like the Rotary Club International, and I don't know if the Rotary Club would be like the best sort of organizations to try to talk to, but it's like, just as an example, this is like one group where they have like little meeting groups all over the country, and like you can see where and what date, and they have discussion groups and stuff. And so I'm thinking, if you were going to try to do real world activism, here's what you would do. You would put together, several presentations, maybe like a 10-minute one, 20-minute one, 30-minute. It would be a lot of work. It would be a lot of presentations to put together, and you'd have to sort of memorize each one of them, and they would all sort of overlap with each other, so it wouldn't be quite that hard. And you would have one presentation tailored to this kind of audience, that kind of audience, right? And then once you got all your presentations set up, then what you would do is you would say, hey, Bryant Creek Rod and Gun Club, I would like to have a little presentation there. It's like, how much, would you be willing to do that? And if they say yes, it's like, okay, how much time? They'll say, well, I'll give you 10 minutes. It's like, okay, pull out the 10-minute presentation, and you're talking to a captive, A, you're talking to a captive audience. B, you're talking to real people. You're not talking to fucking college kids whose brains aren't fully developed, who are in like this sort of Marxoid bubble. And you're dealing with people who are probably predisposed to your message anyway. People who are into fishing and hunting, tend to be, more in our direction of stuff. So that's sort of how I would see things.
At the very least, that has less potential to just turn into a shitstorm.
Yeah.
Like the worst that can happen is you show up, and then nothing happens at all.
Yeah. The worst that could happen, or the worst that could happen, let's say you show up and they say, oh, we were supposed to have a presentation for you. Well, we don't have time for that. Sorry. Oh, well. But
there's also,
that's like the worst that can happen.
That no one could have possibly predicted, because it turns out that when he moved to LA, he got surrounded with shitty people. Just another thing that no one could have foreseen. Not at all like an obvious thing that definitely would have happened.
Wait a minute. Are there shitty people in LA? Are there shitty people in LA?
It's so weird. Like he has, like there are just random thoughts like jumping on his lap in the videos. There's like some autistic dude screaming about how pedophilia is a virtue or something. And it's just an absolute shit. These are people like in his apartment with him streaming.
Yeah. Like, well, I think I forget what he was doing. I forget if it was like they were saying he was streaming 7 days a week, and like,
this is another thing. He got a manager, which
why?
So he gets this manager that, as I understand it, is connected with more mainstream political stuff.
What does he need a manager for? But whatever.
And then his manager tells him to do something obviously retarded. He's like, "Oh, stream for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, or whatever." And then he's like, "Oh, okay, what could go wrong?" It's like this is what could you end up with autistic people screaming about pedophilia because you don't actually have 8 hours of stuff to talk about 7 days a week.
Well, you just hang out with the friends and stuff. Just So what was he saying? Was he saying that, like, I mean, did he literally just charge out into the room and say, pedophilia is great, I love pedophilia? Like, what was he?
No, it wasn't literally that. I'm being hyperbolic.
But it was like,
you go watch the stuff on Kronos has the clips.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I saw a bunch of stuff from Kronos. The thing is, there's like so much footage that I think I've seen like 2 hours of footage and then like an hour of people shitting on Baked, but I didn't see the stuff about the pedophilia. So, but okay, so that's an interesting thing. So I don't know. I haven't watched a whole lot of Baked Alaska stuff.
Yeah, okay. This is just people are commenting. So the guy was talking about teenagers, not literal children. Some people want to be specific about the meaning of the word pedophilia, and there's an important moral difference there. But nonetheless, it's like a bad idea. It's still a bad idea to have someone talking about that as well on your stuff.
Oh, Baked followers, apparently, according to Meme Merchant, Baked followers flagged Kronos.
Yeah, well, but that is rumored.
That is rumored. I mean, there's no way that to be
and then the other thing that Baked did, he's doing all these streams constantly, and then he started banning people from his comment section for making overly toxic comments, people talking about killing different ethnic groups and things like this, and this caused people, to get quite pissed, because what it seemed like he was doing, the perception was that he moved to LA and now he's trying to become this more mainstream guy, and he's turning on the evil racists that helped prop him up to begin with.
Yeah, the problem is if you want to go be like a more mainstream, like that's just, I don't, maybe that could work, but like it takes a long time. Like, for example, when Molyneux went from like talking about ANCAP stuff to basically being a white nationalist in so many words, like that was a transition that took a while. That's not something that happened overnight. It was like Molyneux's transition was as subtle as his development was subtle. So it wasn't, so you can't like just say, oh, guess what? It's kind of like David Sherratt. Like he was a big, skeptic guy. And then he said, oh, I'm an SJW now, and made a new channel. I suspect he thought that he was going to be like really popular and people were going to be like, oh, you were one of them, now you're one of us. And thought he was going to have a whole lot of friends or something, and then found out, no, like nobody fucking cares. Nobody cares about you, shit rat. But I'm wondering if maybe Baked, I don't know what Baked thought, if maybe he would, I don't think he realizes how painful that transition is. That it's really hard.
So a bunch of people are saying that it's not as rumored as I thought it was, and that actually Baked, there's a Discord channel, and Baked Alaska is planning flagging campaigns in the Discord channel. And again, in this list of unpredictable things, Discord material was leaked to the public. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just hearing this in what people are commenting, but multiple people have said it now. So, I mean, if that is true, then obviously that is what it is. That's pretty dumb.
Right. Are you guys going to just talk about Baked for a while? Like, no, and we should not. We should not be talking about Baked for hours or whatever, because that is kind of gay. And he's right about that. But the whole point of this is like the whole we're just sort of shitting on the whole idea of the unite the right idea that they had. And the thing is, the right stuff and Mike, and they've sort of figured it out a little bit. and they're saying that we are TRS G-Tau, TRS going their own way, and that's good and all, but I forgot where I was going to go. Where I was going to go with this. That's good and all, but I think there's a bit of an issue where, like, how to. Well, I don't want to get it. I don't want to get into that here. So I don't know. Sean, do you have something else to say? Save me. I'm dying here.
Well, so we Spencer and Baked Alaska, and then we talked about Cantwell. I guess other lessons from Cantwell are like doxing people is bad, as it turns out.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. Yeah,
okay. Ricky Vaughn, okay. Let's be so the Paul Nealon doxed Ricky Vaughn, and then Cantwell says he didn't dox Ricky Vaughn. It's just that when the leftist media reached out to him to ask for like pictures and stuff, he confirmed that pictures of Cantwell with Ricky Vaughn were real.
Right. Oh yeah,
which amounts to he doxed him.
Talking to the Huffington Post. Yeah, he confirmed the dox, and I guess I would say with Cantwell, it was with Ricky Vaughn. Basically, what happened is Ricky Vaughn had been on TRS, and he was talking to Mike, and he was talking to Stryker, and he was saying, like, the thing is, Ricky Vaughn before Charlottesville was like an explicit white nationalist in so many words. After Charlottesville, Ricky Vaughn is like, I gotta get away from this stuff. And so he was actually on TRS, and he actually was on Strike and Mike. And he was talking to Stryker, and he was saying, hey, Stryker, this TWP stuff, it's crap. And he was like saying, like, all this like full black uniform and like armbands, and like this really puts off a Nazi aesthetic. And Stryker was being like, I don't know if he was being deliberately stupid or what, but Stryker was saying, how is that Nazi? How is an armband Nazi? How is all black Nazi? How is like, and he was trying to point to any like particular thing, and it was just being like this deconstruction stuff, and it was just dumb. And so, but Ricky Vaughn, what he was trying to do is but the fact that Ricky Vaughn was talking to Mike and talking to Stryker is evidence that I think Ricky Vaughn was still and is still a white nationalist in so many words. But the thing is, he was moved out of the movement, quote unquote, whatever the fuck you would. But I think that's too grandiose a title for this shit show. But he left it because of Charlottesville. And so Richard Spencer saying, yeah, we're cutting the fat. It's like, okay, so Ricky Vaughn, like, is Ricky Vaughn the fat, right? The guy, I mean, Ricky Vaughn had, during the Trump election, I forget how many followers he had at his peak, but he was pushing narrative. Like, he was pushing narrative better than Bill Mitchell was. Like, this is not like the fat. And this is something that's very serious. And it's not just like, oh, don't fly swastika flags and stuff. And I'm thinking, you know what? How about don't even think that? You know, because people say, oh, it's optics cucking, Ryan. You're cucking on all this stuff. And I'm thinking, like, I don't believe this stuff. You know, I have a pretty good understanding of history, and I don't think Hitler was the good guy, right? Like, I literally don't believe it. So when you say, "Oh, you're cucking by wanting to kick these people to the curb, or kick these sort of ideas to the curb, or kick like siege culture to the curb," it's like, no, I literally don't believe any of that, right? And to tolerate it would be cucking for me, right? To tolerate this shit would be cucking. And
yeah,
anyway, so that's just
I guess. I mean, another. I can't. Well, it's just endless. Like, you also have the whole, like, he's working with the FBI, and he says he's just going to inform on the leftist people, but it's like, can you trust Cantwell to not betray people on the right? Well, no, Cantwell is now literally known for helping dox an important right-wing person.
Right, and
obviously not.
And what's he going to do with Antifa? What's he going to do? Oh, he's going to dox them? Like,
I guess he's trying to help the FBI build like cases against them because of things they did at Charlottesville or something.
I guess.
Yeah, Cantwell's just a giant clusterfuck. And the thing about Cantwell, so the important lesson, I mean, like, the life lessons to draw from Cantwell are not things like don't use meth, don't dox people, don't talk to the FBI. Like, these are things that most people just should know. The lesson is, when you see people like that, though, like, don't associate with them. Step away. Like, because if you bring them in and put this is what happens. This is predictably what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's predictably what happens. And one thing I also kind of notice, like, is people who are obsessed with Jews, they like lose their mind. And now, first off, I mean, we saw this with Nealon. Like, he seemed to be a pretty normal guy, and then he got red pill. He got red pill overdose, and learned too much stuff about Jews, true or false. Which, you know, I don't, doesn't really matter for what I'm saying here, but whether what he learned was true or false. You know, he got too much information, true or false, about the Jews, and lost his cool. And that's one thing I've sort of noticed, is that people who tend to be really into Jews, those are the ones that, you know, fuck up. Those are the ones that lose their mind somehow.
That's true. And I mean, in part, this is just going to be because who is going to really get into Jewish stuff? Now, obviously, there are exceptions. So we're going to, you know, we're talking about averages here. But in general, that's going to be people who don't care very much about being, you know, social pariahs and things like this, people that are maladjusted to begin with. And so it probably selects for. But also, I do think there's a bi-directional thing going on, because it seems to me that people I've known, and Nealon is an example. I don't know him at all, but he's just an example that did this publicly, but became more crazy as the result of getting really into this stuff about Jews.
Right.
And I don't know, people, it seems to be something, maybe it's just because of how taboo it is. You're not supposed to think about it at all. It's one of like the ultimate taboos to a degree, but people become obsessed with this stuff in a way that they don't become obsessed with, say, black people having a lower mean IQ.
Right.
It really gets in their head in a strange and cancerous way.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and I
like,
don't
you could be on paper. It should be possible for people to say, like, yes, Jewish people, as it turns out, they have, because they're like immigrants everywhere, they have problems with like nationalism, and they're quite intelligent, so they're overrepresented in elites, and they're a little above average in ethnocentrism, and these are just dispassionate facts about another ethnic group. In theory, you should be able to talk about that the same way you talk about standard deviation difference in mean IQ between blacks and whites, but this is just not what happens for reasons that I don't really understand.
Right. Well, I think part of it, like with blacks have low IQ, or blacks are criminal, or blacks vote for the third world, that's all like out in the open, and you can like see it all. And it's like really in your face. It's not hidden. And as a result, there's not a whole lot of room for imagination about other, you know, big racial groups. Like, you can talk about Hispanics and what are the traits of Hispanics and what are they doing. And it's sort of open, and it's less hidden. Now, people will try to deny it, obviously. Like, we all know very well that people try to deny racial differences in behavior between like the recognized races. But with Jews, you know, you sort of have an issue where with Jews, like, you literally can't even see them, right? Like, you know, you look at a Fox News panel, it's like, oh, look, it's 5 white guys. It's like, well, 3 of them are Jewish. And,
right.
and so when you notice that, you can sort of, and nobody else notices that, it can sort of drive you crazy. On top of that, because there's not really good data on the behavior of Jews, your imagination runs wild, right? Whereas with blacks, we have a lot of data on, and so we know, okay, there's exceptions. We know exactly how often Naxalt applies to blacks, for example. You know, with Jews, it's not so clear. Now, as it happens, we're starting to get some data. We're starting to finally assemble some data on Jews more and more, but it's still nowhere near what it is for other racial groups. And so there's just room for imagination, is what I think there is.
And there's also, I mean, like, you think back to the coincidence detector, right? This app for Chrome, which would put the triple parentheses around Jewish names so that you would notice it all the time.
Right.
This is like a very extreme level of like purposefully setting up confirmation bias, but it's funny. Like I understand why it was done. It is funny, but that one thing that happens, yes, people feel like they're seeing things everywhere that no one else can see. I think it's almost like you've seen through the Matrix sort of feeling to some degree for some people. Whereas like with black people, it's not like that because what people think is, that they're like this too. You just don't say it.
Right. But I think that's obviously true. like everyone. Yeah. So.
Yes. But the funny thing is also, I think that, so I think to a degree, the opposite is true though, that if you say it in a in a reasonable way, that again, this is just anecdotal, but in my experience, there's almost no pushback whatsoever to the suggestion that due to their historical experiences, Jewish people are on average predisposed to be anti-nationalist, and that also they're smarter than average, and this leads to a disproportionate representation of them among elites. Like this is, in my experience, like there's no pushback at all against that. When talking to leftists, even.
Yeah.
Whereas by contrast, if you go, black people are kind of dumb, right? Like there's quite a bit, or even if you say, one standard deviation below the mean in IQ, you do get, no matter how reasonable you say it, people's heads kind of explode.
Yeah, some people's heads explode. But
part of the degree to which I guess what I'm saying is that the anti-Semitism stuff is this like hidden truth that no one knows isn't actually because of the descriptive content of what is being said, but rather because of the way in which it is said by anti-Semites.
Right.
And like whatever, like the view that I just said could be described as anti-Semitic in some respect as well. And like descriptively, it is largely the same view. I'm talking mostly here about tone, and I'm using the word anti-Semites to describe people who talk about Jews in a certain tone.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But obviously, yeah, I think the race realism is in general a much more important thing than being Jew wise or Jew woke or whatever.
Well, yes, and this is something that a lot of people don't believe, right? People will say, no, the most important thing is the Jewish thing, because ultimately the Jews are the ones who are pushing these narratives about this, that, and the other, about the blacks or the Hispanics or the Muslims down the line. So there are people who really think that the Jewish thing is like the most important thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. I guess maybe sort of imagining, well, if not for the Jews, we would have an alliance with these other groups, and I'm not sure exactly how that would play out.
Well, I guess that we wouldn't have as many false beliefs about them because the anti-white ideologies are perpetuated by Jewish intellectuals.
Yeah, perhaps.
That's like, okay, say that's, and we could get into the weeds of empirically how true that is, and a lot of people overestimate, I would say, the role of Jews, and a lot of anti-Semites do. People in general underestimate, right? But regardless, it's sort of like the problem is anti-white intellectuals writ large, right? And so you can argue against those people without obsessing over the fact that some of them, and I think it's something like a third of them, tend to be Jewish.
Yep. Yeah, and that's something that I've said before. It's like, look, you have all these things that people hate. People generally hate the party establishment for the Republican Party. They hate the banks. They hate the fire sector. They hate the Chamber of Commerce. They hate Bill Kristol. They hate the neocons. Like, people generally hate the media. The general public has a negative view of Hollywood and like entertainment media in general. It's like, well, look, like, it's like, what more do you not? What more do you want? What more do you need? Like they literally hate all these things. Like if you're anti-Jewish, if like let's say you're a person and all you want to do is like take out the Jews in whatever way. Maybe you want to exterminate them, or at the very least you want to remove them from power. Let's say that's your goal, just as a thought experiment here. It seems to me that it would be a much more effective way to take out the Jews by simply hooking onto a lot of stuff that people already hate. Like if that's your goal, if your goal is literally just to take out the Jews, you don't care about anything else. You just want to take out the Jews. It seems to be much more effective to just say, hey, you hate banks. Let's kill all the bankers. Oh, you hate anti-white intellectuals. Let's kill all the anti-white intellectuals, right? I mean, that's obviously I'm being really extreme, and I definitely do not endorse any of this stuff. But but I'm just saying, just sort of that as a thought experiment, like why would you just like bringing up Jews, like it almost seems like there's no point, even if they are of central import. The moment you bring up Jews, it's like now that's like, okay, now you're one of those people. You're one of those people that talks about Jews, when it seems it's so much easier to go with use the, what's it called, the jujitsu or judo, whatever, go with the energy of the political movement as opposed to fighting against it. So
yeah, and I mean, and obviously the problem with Jewish people, let's say they're overrepresented among anti-white intellectuals, right? Which, I mean, to some degree they surely are. It's just a question of the degree of overrepresentation. The problem fundamentally is still with anti-white intellectuals, and so if you like have a way to deal with anti-white intellectuals in general, then and maybe you bring, like, the thing is, if you could make it not something you're obsessed with, then I do think you could bring up as one point, oh, by the way, this person, has there's an ethnic interest component to this because they are Jewish. But it doesn't turn into like this thing where you're just screaming about the fact that they are Jewish, or you make it a central piece or something like this. That does not come off well in any context. And it's not, like I say, it's not helpful. If the goal is to stop anti-white intellectuals, that is not helpful in doing that.
Yeah. Well, I go even further and I say, if your goal is to just stop Jews, it's not even helpful. Like if your goal if your goal was to just defeat Jews, it wouldn't be helpful to name the Jew, as they say. So I guess we're all in agreement on that. What else were we going to talk about?
Well, and one thing I would say, I guess as well, because you're occasionally reading the comments and people are like, this process by which you become aware of Jewish people and their overrepresentation, and then you look for and you notice whenever you see Jewish people who fit the stereotype of being in an anti-white intellectual position, leads to a dramatic overestimation of the degree of overrepresentation. People are saying, all the anti-white advocates, basically all of them are Jewish, and all of the pro-white people are not. And that's very obviously not true. This is not like this is not even an open question. This is just self-evidently not true if you pay attention to who people are and who says what. And yet there are people who really think this because of the way in which they're looking for patterns as a result of this being so based on like vague historical analyses of things, as opposed to the sort of social scientific data that tends to inform discussions about Africans and East Asians and the other racial groups and ethnic groups that we like to talk about.
Yeah. I don't even understand Falk's view on this. Just let them dominate? Like, no. Okay. Anyway, so I guess one thing I was thinking about, because I was listening to Richard Spencer, and I was just sort of, and I was listening to doing one of these like fake interviews, like, remember when Glenn Beck had his like quote unquote friends, his little posse come on, and they would ask Glenn Beck questions, and then Glenn Beck would say the bit. so yes, Richard Spencer, yeah, so and sort of made it look like Glenn Beck is like, I don't know, like the leader of like a group of friends or something, when really all these guys are just like fake sycophants. It's like anyway, but so that's sort of the vibe I got with Richard Spencer and this guy interviewing Richard Spencer. It was like really but the thing is, Richard Spencer was going on there, and he was talking about how there's before Charlottesville and after Charlottesville, and how like after Charlottesville was like, it's almost, he was talking about it like in these biblical terms, like it was this inevitable phase. It was like this new phase of the movement. That after Charlottesville is a new phase. Before Charlottesville, everything was fun. It was, we were curiosity. We could go to these events and we could say things. And then after Charlottesville, things got more difficult. The system started to array itself against us. And he's using all this passive voice shit. And it's amazing. It's like, it just sort of happened. Mistakes were made. Things happened, and then a bad situation happened. And then he talks about how like the system really saw us as a legitimate threat. And I'm just thinking about this, like, he's talking about the system sees us as a legitimate threat, and sort of implying that we're like big guys now, like it's almost like a badge of honor that the system is against him. And I'm just thinking about, in like Iron March and Atomwaffen, when they would be plastered on like major media, and when they were being like investigated by the feds and stuff, they would say to each other in the little Discord groups and the little forums about how, oh, we're like a serious force now. Like, look at how serious we are. We got the feds coming after us. And I was like, no, like, so that was pretty surreal to see Richard Spencer say that. I think Richard Spencer's kind of in denial about what's going on. I really do. Because
I mean, he surely is, because he made such a. It's just so error prone, everything that's happened. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it would have been better if the system did not know that, quote, we are a, quote, threat, right? Because then it brings down a bunch of pressure, causes a bunch of problems, inhibits the growth of the ideas. It's just obvious. Like, this is so stupid. It's a great thing that now, like, websites it's harder to spread this stuff.
Right. Yeah. But so what else was I going to say? So just one thing I sort of noticed, and this is something that Richard Spencer does, and I guess I'll talk about this sort of in general, because this is the Optics Cuck stream, is an issue of creating battles where there are none. And that's one thing that happened back with Hellgate. And with Hellgate, it's, what Richard Spencer did. Richard Spencer didn't actually do anything wrong. He just held up a glass and said, "Hail victory," whatever. That's fine. But of course, the issue was that, there were one or two retards in the crowd who put up the Roman salute, and of course, and look, obviously, in an ideal world, we wouldn't, putting your hand at a 45-degree angle wouldn't be, a hateful thing or whatever. Okay. But the problem is, like, we're living in, it's sort of like the equivalent today, sort of equivalent to the Middle Ages, of running around with a pentagram or saying, "I'm a heretic," or "I'm a Satanist," or something. It's like, don't do that. That's really dumb. You're going to get burnt at the stake. Right. And that's sort of the situation we're here today. But the problem is, what he would do, and to a lesser extent what Andrew Anglin would do back before Andrew Anglin has started to get religion a little bit, is he would thrust us into battles like we were not prepared for. Okay. And he would, like that, and that's just something that Hellgate would do. I got a message here. Oh, never mind. And I guess he thought, oh, the movement is growing. Look at how much attention we're getting. Not necessarily from Hellgate, but from all these other little events. But what he's doing is he's increasing the salience of a movement before the movement is at all in any way capable of dealing with that level of salience. Because when there's a bunch of negative media coming after you, how do you counter that? You have to be able to counter that. And he's seeing, and I guess, I don't know if he saw that, oh, all this press is good or something. And there was an article that I'll talk about here. This is by Greg Johnson, Countercurrents. Now, I personally don't really like Greg Johnson. There's nothing ideological about it. It's not like, there's nothing hidden or secret. There's some secret vendetta or anything. I just don't like the guy. Like, I don't like the way he talks. I don't like the way I just don't like him on a pure personal level.
And just to be clear, this is Ryan saying this, not us saying this.
Yeah. This
I don't have a particular personal problem with Greg Johnson. Just to be clear, since I'm like sitting here silently while you say that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm not. It's funny. I'm talking about thrusting people into battles they're not prepared for. And here I am talking about Greg Johnson, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, Ryan, this is not. That's really funny. Where was I? Oh, here we go. This is a great money quote. This is from a article, In Bed with the Press. And this is about a book that was written where basically this reporter went around with Matt Heimbach and Richard Spencer. And it was a guy, some Tenold or something, but it's amazing. It's amazing that this is just more like letting the institutional press, whose only purpose is to destroy you in all your events. But anyway, there was a great quote here. Oh God, where is it? Let me scroll. I lost it here. I lost the quote. God damn it. Sean, can you say something while I find the quote? Oh, here it is. Here's the quote. Here's a quote. Years ago, Matt Parrott. Now, Matt Parrott's the talk to the cops guy. Also, I think was Matt Heinbach's. Was Matt Heinbach's like godfather or something?
No. Matt Parrott was Heinbach's father-in-law.
Oh,
He
father-in-law.
choked unconscious after he found out that Parrott was videotaping him having sex with his mother-in-law, who Parrott was married to, because the alt-right is actually like a redneck reality TV show.
That was
Parrott
amazing.
ran to a Walmart and called the police. Because we needed a cherry on the top, calling them from fucking Walmart.
They called them Walmart, but then apparently Heimbach's wife got a divorce and she kept the trailer. Ooh. Oh, that's the cherry on top. She kept the trailer. That's even. Oh, this is levels of white trash not even possible. But anyway, so here's the quote. Years ago, Matt Parrott told me the cynical strategy behind Heimbach's active press engagement. This is Greg Johnson speaking. And I suspect that similar calculations drive Spencer as well. According to Parrott, most people in this movement lack the self-esteem and judgment to choose their own leaders. Instead, they allow the press and groups like the SPLC to anoint their leaders for them. Therefore, if one wants to become a white nationalist leader, one must court the press and the SPLC. How does one court the press? By giving them what they want, of course, by fulfilling the stereotypes that advance the enemy's narrative. Thus, Heimbach cheerfully incarnates the fat redneck, while Spencer plays the evil wasp snob. Thus, Heimbach and Spencer have a symbolic relationship with the enemy media. The media love Heimbach and Spencer because they help cast white nationalism in a negative light, and Heimbach and Spencer love the media because they believe it will elevate them over their rivals in the movement. Neither side has an interest in respecting white nationalism, in representing white nationalism in a way that might actually resonate with the white majority. This is according to Greg Johnson. I think Richard Spencer maybe is not quite like that. I don't know. It just looks to me that's literally what Heimbach was doing. And I guess I'll say, even if it's not their strategy, even if they didn't intend to, even if Richard Spencer did not intend to put on sort of the waspy airs to look like, to play the role of that snobby kind of person, he did. Even if it wasn't his intention, that's what he did. And that's sort of why the media... Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's the only reason the media sort of targeted him or singled him out. Obviously, the NPI putting himself in public, but it's right. He ends up playing that kind of role, and this creates sort of a problem. This creates a problem. I'll look at this comment from Stephen James that you can get an individual who can gain salience, who can become a salient figure by acting a fool. And so he will gain traction and become like a media figure. And then some people will see who he is, and then they'll sort of follow his, like Matt Heimbach was able to, parlay his appearance on TV into forming the traditional or trad youth as it was before. And then it became the traditional Workers' Party. So he was able to sort of parlay that into, and so you end up having a situation where, our enemies define our leaders. And in the olden days, back before the internet, that happened all the time. And so, you got, and the thing is that they can only do it to a certain degree. The leaders have to be semi-plausible figures. They can't just be like, hey, they can't just find some hobo on the street and say, hey, guess what? You're the leader of the white resistance or whatever. But yeah, so I don't know, Sean, do you have anything to say?
Well, I guess another thing, Spencer is also, I think, first I get the traditional Workers' Party, what an intrinsically horrible idea. This weird affinity with National Socialism. But setting that aside, also another thing to say about Spencer is that he has some bizarre problem with I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound insulting, but with facts. And the thing is, he has expressed this before, that he's shit on the sort of race and IQ stuff, which is okay. And this, to be fair, this is a little weird because he also, of course, helps run Washington Summit Publishing, which publishes lots of books on race realism. But then when he does talks, he shits on the idea of talking about these things and says that people aren't going to be convinced by these boring facts. And he generally, I think he has some weird aesthetic vision of what he wants to do in the world, of being some like inspiring great figure of some sorts that I think is just not like, it's just not how it's going to go. And in fact, like to the degree that things are going to succeed, autism isn't going to be the only thing, but autism, by which I mean race realist stuff, is going to have a significant part of it.
Well, yeah, and we've said this before that all the race and IQ stuff, it's super effective. First off, it's something where the downside is not very big, because at most you could say, oh, this person is kind of racist for knowing all these racist hate facts. But at the same time, there's a pedigree to it. There's a kind of pedigree to it with like real academics. Like people love to shit all over Rushton, but guess what? Rushton was the author of the best-selling college psychology textbook at one time. Sean, do you remember?
He was the author of a fairly well-selling one back in like, but to be fair, that was actually before he did the race stuff. That was in like 1980.
That's what I mean. So, but the thing is, obviously, once he did the race stuff, then it's, oh, we don't want to publish you. But the thing is, the fact that he was able to do that beforehand, that's like he's a bona fide academic. Same with, Richard Lynn. And there's a whole bunch of HBD people coming up the pipeline right now. Like it's, once these sort of big names are kind of dying off, but once they die off, it's not like it's going to be over. There's a whole bunch of guys. In fact, the actual research being done is far more profound than I think anything that Rushton and Jensen did. Although it's kind of hard. No, I shouldn't say that because it's hard to compare. It's apples to oranges. But it's still going, and there's a whole lot of like academic undergirding stuff to race realism and HBD. And so if you base and so like what could be a better thing to base your entire movement on, and especially all that HBD stuff, it's like it's fantastic because these are people who like all that stuff, all like the whole argumentative framework, for lack of a better term, it's all geared towards defending a controversial thing. It's all geared towards, I guess, for battle. I'm struggling for words here, but it's like battle ready. It's like battle ready talking points. Like it's meant to counter criticism. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing people will say is that, there's a certain sort of person who's going to be convinced by that sort of argument, but most people aren't going to be, because they don't care about data, they don't care about autistic arguments, they care about appeals to emotion, they care about humor and things like this. And to that, I think there are two things to say. One is that I think that there's a sort of a hierarchy of belief formation, whereby a lot of people who don't like much in the way of information or data or arguments have their heads filled with the beliefs of people who they look up to. Yes. Sort of higher. This is especially true of professors, but this is also, I think, just true generally of sort of higher class people, that they end up informing the beliefs of the lower class people. And it's not just a class thing, but it's a belief hierarchy thing. And that the sort of arguments about race and IQ, it's true that there's a certain group of people who just don't care about that. But those people, I think, not entirely, but significantly do get their points of view from people who if you go higher up the hierarchy enough, do care about that sort of thing. And so that's one thing to say about that. Another thing is, it's true that there should be media aimed at like different sorts of people, but at no point is like the correct form of that media going to be, some of the like weird rallies and Nazi uniforms and stuff like that.
Right. One thing I will say about the race and IQ stuff, like for example, the whole crowd event, what ended up happening, you could say, well, the crowd event, like there's different levels of things of there's different levels of the fight. For example, like making somebody go from being, a full-on narrative person to not believing the narrative. By the narrative, I mean they believe that blacks are held down by the effects of slavery and segregation, and that the differences between the races are all down to these cultural events and oppressive forces. But if you say no, actually, wait, did the stream go down? Oh no, it's up. Okay, actually, it's about these are genetic differences, and if they go from that, even if they don't become like a white nationalist, they're still like way better. Like there can still be massive improvements all across the spectrum. And even if you're not shifting them all the way over to, taking their own side, they're still, if you can move them from being anti-white to not anti-white, I mean that's a big improvement, right? And that's good. And that helps, the ultimate, whatever political goals you want to. So like there's multiple levels to operate at, and saying, oh, this race and IQ stuff, it's not going to convince someone to be a white nationalist. Sometimes it does. I mean, it certainly did with, I guess me and with Sean. Like it certainly did for us. For some people it will. And frankly, those are actually going to be okay. I'm just going to say it. Those are going to be higher quality people.
Well, yeah. Look, if you were actually, I mean, if your worldview was actually changed by like some skinhead screaming about Jews or something, then you're probably a moron.
In fairness, Richard Spencer doesn't advocate that. In fairness, he doesn't advocate that. So, and I mean, he goes to these events like all suited up and
yeah, that's true. I mean, I wasn't talking about. We've talked about a range of people here.
Yeah.
I wasn't specifically referencing Spencer.
Yeah. But yeah, so obviously I think the race and IQ stuff, and of course it leads to you thinking about, and once the narrative is broken, then it makes it certainly a lot easier for you to become a full-on white separatist, or just start to taking the side of your own people. Like if you start to say, hey, wait a minute, this stuff that's being said about white people, this is false, these are lies. No, you're not guilting me. No, I don't owe you anything. Get out of my. That's good. Right. That's an improvement.
That's the major import, is that it cleanses white people of their supposed sins, which frees people up to take what view of white people they want.
Right. And when that happens, well, we can just look into the past to see what views of white people take when they don't have that narrative pushed upon them. And it tends to be views that are today called white nationalist, right? So that's really, it's more of it's a negative thing, right? It sort of opens the breach, and there's sort of the belief that I have that once that breach is opened, that and it may take a few generations, but once that breach is opened, the white people start to, their views improve all across the board. We'll just say it's a very holistic thing. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to read a few comments here. Spencer has said he spoke to this guy for only 1 hour on one occasion. Well, first off, mistake right there. He discussed the claims in the book during this last interview on Luke Ford. All right, fair enough. But I will say, talking to this guy for 1 hour, that's still shit. All types of streams. Do you believe that Spock Talk is a Jewish Negro? Please respond. I don't know, Sean, if you've taken a 23andMe.
Yeah, I'm not a Jewish Negro.
Okay. So okay, there was a comment a while ago talking about Ryan Dawson. Like Ryan Dawson had this amazing confidence in political views not having any genetic component, and he was like, yeah, I don't know what to say, but I guess if he wants to argue, like we could argue, he could come on to all type streams or whatever. But Ryan, how close are you to super chats? Probably an infinite distance, because I actually have all the statistics needed for super chats. The thing is, they're just reviewing. They say they're reviewing this channel, but they're not. Like they've been saying that for over a month now. So I don't know. I think super chats may not be coming. Dawson is hopeless on race. Oh, maybe. but it could still be fun to fuck them up. YouTube Jews take 30%. YouTube Jews take 30% of super chats. Ryan Dawson. Opinion on Kaufman's paper. Does it represent a paradigm shift in accepting race IQ as a default hypothesis? Thoughts on greater agenda? We talked about the Kaufman's, and I think Kaufman's, first off, in that paper, Kaufman's was citing people, and we said this in a previous stream. Kaufman's was citing people like Henry Harpending. He cited Richard Lynn as just like matter-of-factly about like the IQs of different racial groups. So I think Kaufman's is one of these hereditarian Jews. I think Kaufman's is a based Jew. So sadly, I don't think it represents a paradigm shift. Sadly. So Sean, anything to say? Use Streamlabs. I've been thinking about using Streamlabs. So
I think that there's somewhat of a perspective shift going on because you have a lot of things. So you have the Kaufman's thing.
No, I don't think the Kaufman's paper represents that, though. I think there is, but I don't think.
Well, I think I think that it is symptomatic of it, certainly, that it got published because it got published in a fairly reputable journal, just saying, oh, well, the default should be genes and environment. I've heard that one of the peer reviewers was Steven Pinker, and if that's true, that's also significant. And then you have that going on. You have the Sam Harris thing going on. You have one of the most important things, I think, was Richard Hare, who is the lead editor of the journal Intelligence, which is the most important sort of journal on intelligence research. And he wrote an article on the Sam Harris stuff, defending specifically the default hypothesis on the black-white IQ gap, that if we don't, given the heritability of intelligence and we know what the default hypothesis is, genes and environment sort of thing. Yeah. And so you had that being defended in public there as well. And then, I mean, Molyneux is, he's doing more IQ stuff like he has been doing and on ever more sort of centrist streams and things like that. So I think it's becoming more normalized. And even talking about Jewish people, the Kaufman's paper perhaps represents a shift there as well. So I think there's a good movement in that direction. And then it's sort of funny because you can imagine a world in which sort of race realism is normalized, but if it was, depending on how unwilling they are to optics cuck, the alt-right still would not be normalized.
Right. And that would be very interesting. Well, at that point, it's like, what exactly is the point of alt-right? Now, one thing I sort of think, and this is where we may get a little bit of disagreement, but I think if you have a movement, this is sort of me doing my little thing. I think having the term nationalist or right in the name of your thing is marginalizing. Because what do you gain by saying, oh, we're a right movement, we're a right-wing movement? What does that get you? Like what does right get you?
Well, I mean, maybe it gets you, I think it's a polarizing thing, right? Because people on the right are going to probably increase their affinity for you. People on the left are going to decrease theirs, would be my guess.
Sure. So, yeah, so I guess, and so it polarizes. But I don't think it'll gain you anything because, I just don't see how it gains you anything. I mean, I guess if you're having trouble sort of mobilizing support for what you have, it would. But like, for example, from our point of view, like if we're doing stuff on the internet, like the amount of initial support that I'm going to have is going to be very much tied to how big my YouTube channel is. I mean, that's just the truth of it, or how big my Twitter is, how big my YouTube channel is, and like the Discord, the Facebook, like it's going to be tied to that. It's going to be tied to those like real physical, well, not physical, but you know what I mean? Those sorts of things, right? It's not going to be tied to, oh, it's a right thing. It's like, well, like that's not going to get you. That's not going to get you.
Yes, and I would also say that the right label probably only fools people for so long, because I think we had something like this of the alt-right, where there was a time period, maybe in 2015, early 16, when a lot of right-wing people sort of had a favorable view of the alt-right, or more favorable than they otherwise would have, because they associated it with themselves because of the phrase right was in it. And
Right.
this is like the Milo crowd, and this sort of what we now call the alt-right. And so
Mhm.
for a little bit, they sort of started to come into this label, but then they realized, oh, this is not actually what we had in mind, and then that did not last.
Yeah. Yeah, but I also having the label right, it also robs you of a real what I think it's a real powerful narrative. And I've had this may be a little bit of selection bias because I can tell you, well, there's a lot of people who have told me that they found my narrative on you're not left wing. You're not really left wing. You're just a black nationalist and you or just sort of the narrative. You are as left wing as Saruman and Wormtongue. So I guess that's sort of cringy Lord of the Rings reference, but it's useful because people sort of know what that is. So it's a quick way to get across the concept. And I've had people say that. And if you call yourself, "Oh, we're the right wing," you can't use that narrative. You can't sort of throw it down like, "No, look, these are black nationalists. These are sort of Mexican nationalists." And then you have these people. They call themselves left wing, but basically their entire worldview is centered around race and centered around racial oppression and white people being evil. Just like people in other times, they would talk about how Jews were evil oppressors, and so you can make that parallel. There's so much more you can do. And just first off, I think it's all true. I want to make that clear. Like everything I say, I think it's all like matter of factly true. I matter of factly think this is actually going on. I don't. I think basically everything is nationalism of one sort or another. And if something says it's not nationalist, it's just cloaked as something else. Like even the Soviet Union ultimately became a vehicle of Russian nationalism. Okay, so I want to make it clear. Like I'm talking about like the effectiveness of narrative. I also want to make it clear that I believe all this stuff, to a T. Um, but there's just so much more flexibility, and also like if you call yourself nationalist, that it's the same sort of thing. You sort of rob yourself of the ability to say no. Everything's nationalist. Look at what they're doing. And you can sort of scratch the surface of most political movements, and you can usually find some sort of really practical interest behind it, either an ethnic interest or a religious grouping or some sort of economic interest behind almost everything, right? And so this idea of pure ideology, pure sort of save the world, uh, that is sort of the moniker of quote unquote the left, it's a fraud. And if you call yourself right and call yourself nationalist, you're sort of robbing yourself of the ability to expose that fraud, right? And so I think having calling yourself
Well,
that. So
I mean, I don't know because I think so. I could see that more of the term right than nationalist, because a nationalist, right? You could easily spin it into that. We say a nationalist is someone who just recognizes that this stuff is going to be based significantly on group interests. I'm in favor of explicitly recognizing that, working the group interest of the nation. There are these weird people that is a special kind of pathological white that doesn't believe in any sort of group interest, and that's quite bad. And I don't know. I think the word nationalist could lend itself easy to fitting in that framing of things.
right.
Now, granted, people do have negative. I mean, there's a negative connotation probably with the word nationalist. I don't know. I like the word nationalist, but
Yeah.
that's literally just I like the sound of that word. So
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah.
mean shit.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well, also apparently you really, really love the term free soil party, right? Is that something you really love?
If that's what you want to call yourself, then you're fully within your rights to do so.
Sean
With
doesn't
free
actually.
country.
Sean does not like that label. Um, but yeah, and so I saw in a previous video. I don't know. People. The reason I like that, and I forget if I talked about this previously, but the reason I like free soil is because it's tied to a historical thing, and being tied to a historical thing, and again, it's also why I like to use Lord of the Rings references, because it's something that I can very quickly say, oh, it's like that. Or like you can say, or like what referencing the movie Memento. Okay, so I can say, oh, transferring knowledge of history from generation to generation, it's like that. It's like a guy who has short-term memory, problem or the inability to write to short-term memory. It's like that. And when you say, and so having the name of the movement be tied to something specific and historical, you can very quickly convey, oh, it's like that. Whereas if you have something new, like for example, alt-right, you have to explain, first off, it has right, and that's marginalizing, and I've already said all that. But you also have to explain literally what it is. It's sort of like trying to explain to a new sport to somebody. Like, it's much easier if it's a sport that's based on other sports they already know versus having to go up to them and say, this is a ball. This is what scoring a point means. This is like having to explain it all the way down, as opposed to using already existing analogs in their mind.
Yeah, that is true. But on the other hand, people will get mad if you name your group something and then it sounds like it's going to be one thing, but then it turns out to diverge from what they think it should be.
So great. But that's what's so great about the free soil movement, is because because David Wilmot has speeches where he makes it very clear that it's about white people. So I think the free soil movement, I think, was very clear, clearly what we would call today a white nationalist movement.
Yeah, I mean, it's an argument that I think you can win, but it's just a question of
they'll get mad. They'll get mad, and the thing is like, I guess you just sort of have to be smart and quote unquote our people, I guess, or people making the argument have to be smart, and they have to sort of have these quotes on hand, because at first they'll go, well, wait a minute, I heard about the free soil movement back in my in 10th grade history, and I didn't hear anything about this stuff. I just heard it was about not having slavery in the Western states. I heard it was about just not spreading slavery to the Western states. That's what they were told about it. And it's an abolition movement, right? And so you have to sort of be smart and be able to say, sure, that was all true. It's not like anything you were told was false. But on top of that, they also were about no free blacks into these
That's
places.
true, but I think it comes off a little perhaps a little inauthentic or sneaky in like a transparent way, though, to name yourself after a group that, like, yes, they were white nationalists, but what we know them for, right, what they stand out for in the public's mind is something that they would conceive of as anti-racist. Now, sure, like, they're against slavery, we're against slavery. I get that. But nonetheless, it feels like you're trying to pull one over on people, right, by naming yourself after something that is associated with anti-racism.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to pull one, because I actually saw the free, but because, well, first off, I sort of like.
Yeah, sure, I'm not
I like the name. I like this thing. So from my point of view, from my personal point of view, it's totally genuine. But
I'm just speculating about what
it may be perceived as. Yeah, it could be. I mean, they could. Yeah, I guess. Well, see, I sort of They could. Although I'm not sure. But the thing is, I say the free soil movement, and it also sort of works out because I am for a kind of robust freedom of association, also for everyone. Now, obviously, let's not try to be cute and say, like obviously, I'm coming from this from a white advocate perspective. Like, it's obviously like, this is not. And obviously it would be very inauthentic to try to like say, no, this is a purely sort of rainbow coalition right from the start. No, obviously it starts from a white advocate perspective. But the free soil movement was a movement from a white advocate perspective, and it also happened to be anti-slavery. And I think today, like, I guess the thing is, I read a whole bunch of speeches at Free Soil Party conventions, and I really think that like pan-separatism does like legitimately capture the spirit of the Free Soil movement. The way these people sort of talked about, like, because they're sort of anti-federal government, they're really like pro-local government. So I think that a particularly for the particular advocates, a white advocate point of view, but also a pro pan separatist point of view, Like, I think that actually does legitimately capture the spirit of the free soil movement. Like, so I don't think there's anything inauthentic at all about it. And
Actually,
it's
a bit
only,
like,
so I don't think it's really sneaky. I'm not, because I think, because I mean, yeah,
in a sense, it's why. So your intention may not be sneakiness, but that might be how it comes. Like it'd be a bit as if you know that what is it? The 1952 UNESCO paper denouncing the existence of race.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like it's like no, but actually my foundation, my racial views are the UNESCO views, and people will be like, that seems wrong because if I remember right, that's the famous thing: the toiletless race didn't exist, and it's like actually that's just a bizarre leftist lie. If you read the paper, it's just explaining that race exists biologically.
right.
And we could call race realism the UNESCO view on race, right? And maybe we would be legitimate in our intent, but it would come off as it's trying to pull a fat, like it would not come off as being very straightforward of people.
I disagree.
That was a very autistic example.
No, that's a nice example. But the thing is, I think you could get away with that saying that's the UNESCO view because you could say, but it's not sneaky though. You're actually like making a point. You're making a point with your name, saying, "Oh, we have the UNESCO 1952 view on race." You're making a point with that name, and yeah, you have to explain it, but that's good because now they're asking, well, why are you calling yourself that if you believe in biological races? And that gives you sort of an opportunity and a reason to explain, a sort of your view, however far you go with that, but also you red pill them on how a particular paper was misinterpreted. And you can actually, and if you're good, you'll actually highlight the money quotes from the UNESCO
Oh God,
paper.
I'm just creating more names I don't like for things.
No, I like that. Hey, you did a good job. The UNESCO view on race. I hope this, I hope this like spreads. This would be great.
Let's not make this a thing. Literally, like my example of, well, this would obviously be a horrible thing to call yourself.
I think this would be a great example. Oh man, the optics cucks are having a civil war here among the optics cucks. This is great. Ask Sean why his accent changed versus a few years ago. Sean, why did your accent change?
Depends on how many years ago they mean. Do they mean, are you comparing it to like 2009? That sort of time frame, or just a couple years? To my knowledge, it has not changed in the last couple years. It did change a long time ago, just because I moved out of where I used to be and made a conscious effort to. Wait, why am I even answering? Okay, this is actually, I don't know. I just started answering that question without even thinking about it. This is not important. This is not a valid topic. What the fuck?
Your accent changed when you moved to Louisiana or whatever. So, but all right.
What the hell? I've never lived in Louisiana. I don't know what you're talking. What the fuck? See, now I'm going to say that and people think, oh, he secretly lives in Louisiana, but I actually don't. Whatever. This is suddenly degenerated into weirdness.
All type streams. Are you reading these? Kind of. I'm kind of I read them like when I don't have anything to talk about. The Free Soil Party is awesome as a reference point. All right, the chat has spoken. Okay.
You could do a poll. Not on the chat. On Twitter.
I don't know if I do a poll, people may want like really stupid names though, like names that suck. Like they may want that like their favorite name might be the Right Wing Nationalist Party, like might win, which is like
yes. The Kill Blacks party.
Yeah, the Kill All Blacks party. Like the problem is like here, like I like on this stuff, like I really think that my farts smell good. Like on this stuff, I think that I know better than everyone else. So that's yeah. That's why I won't give a poll because I think I know better than everyone else. Thoughts on the Nordic? I have no idea what that is. Is an optics discussion complete without discussing Identity Europa? I don't know much about Identity Europa. I have a vaguely positive impression of Identity Europa. I know they do a lot of Flash stuff, and they like put a statue in a hijab, and that was pretty good. So, wow, Ryan, I never knew America's inherent problems lay with race. I'm just a simple cowpoke. Never really considered any of this. Well, that's good.
And consider your mind blown.
Consider your
That's
mind
what we're
blown.
here for.
Yeah. Hitler was never great. LOL at optics party. I like it. Sean is a Louisiana spy from the bayou.
Oh my God.
Sean from the bayou. Ryan, people telling me that the Minnesota study can be refuted on the basis of different adoption times. Look, you know what? Here's how you do it. First off, those people who are bringing up those things probably don't want to be convinced. Like the Minnesota transracial adoption study is a blowout study. There are issues, but the thing is, Sandra Scar set up that study specifically to show. She set up the study trying to prove equality. Okay. And as a result of that study, she stopped being what was she? A psychologist? She must have been a psychologist.
Well, she remained a psychologist.
No, no, she didn't. She became a coffee farmer. She went to grow coffee in Hawaii.
Because of the study?
Shortly after. It was only like a few years after.
Okay, well, I've not ever heard that was like causally.
Well, okay.
All right, whatever.
But apparently she's pretty successful as a coffee farmer in Hawaii. But
she was successful as a psychologist. She was the president of the Behavioral Genetics Association.
Sure, I'm not saying she wasn't, but I'm saying she may have lost her impetus as a result. But anyway, but that's not relevant to the study. Basically, you could say that there were some environmental differences in there, but the thing is, the study was designed to prove equality between the races, and it was supposed to be like the knockout study to show this. And so they had a larger sample size than all the other studies, which is kind of pathetic given how small this was. That Minnesota transracial is probably the best conducted transracial adoption study, and it was longitudinal. They measured them at age 7 and age 17. And the thing is, Sandra Scar thought that the environmental disadvantages that the blacks had, that the adopted black cohort had, was so marginal that it wasn't going to matter. And it's only after the fact that the results did not show equality that she then went, oh, the adopted environments weren't the same, and that's why the results were what they were. In fact, at the age 7 testing, Sandra Scar, when the race gaps were very small, I think they were in the margin of error, Sandra Scar wrote that the results were actually evidence that parental environment, and she was basically arguing that the age 7 results vindicated the environmental hypothesis. But then by age 17, the racial gaps had grown to close to the normal population gaps, and that's when she brought up the problems of the study. That she only brought up the methodological problems of the study in the age 17 write-up on it, not at the age 7 write-up. And so it's just convenient. It's just a convenient excuse. That's what I'll say about the Minnesota thing. As Sean knows anywhere. Worski has 4,000 viewers who are too stupid to know that this is on. Yeah, we actually do this stream at like the worst time, don't we? like we.
I mean, I don't know. They just do their streams throughout the week, though.
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying the time of day. Like we're like directly competing with Worski with this stream.
Well, I mean, they do it the only sensible time to do a stream, though, right? Which is in the late evening.
Yeah.
What else are you going to do?
Well, the thing is, I think we sort of compete for similar fans is a problem. So, oh well, I don't know. It's fine. Like the videos, once they're up, they get like 5,000 views. I think I haven't checked, but they get okay views. It's fine. Also, this channel's not like a really big channel. This is just a chat with Sean and Ryan. Oh, got some questions here.
Now, in terms of the transracial thing, though, there is, I think, if I remember right, there is a relation such that kids who are adopted younger end up better in their cognitive development. But I don't think if you control for this is like based off memory from quite a while ago. But I think that if you sort that out data wise, the result basically still comes out. But with the transracial adoption study in general, it's like most results in psychology don't replicate. We don't have a replication of that. The sample size isn't huge. Like I wouldn't put a lot of faith behind that sort of thing. If you're trying to use the transracial adoption study to do a socioeconomic status, then I would suggest just dealing with the socioeconomic status stuff. And people say, oh, what about the family culture? But you look enough into this socioeconomic stuff, and they get at the home culture. They do things like the home inventory, where they go in and measure the level of cognitive stimulation in the home environment and include that in the index of socioeconomic status. And so that sort of stuff, I think, is on more solid ground than the adoption study. Although I don't know, I say that like intellectually it is, persuasion wise, maybe the adoption is better because it's somehow, I mean, it seems to be something that people find extremely persuasive, even though I don't think it actually is. So.
Yeah, well, it's because it's so simple. It's like, hey, it's because what people are looking for is they're looking for like a Truman Show. They're looking for take them at birth, put them in the equal environment domes, where like the same weather, same everything. They're in like equal environment domes, like cut off from the rest of the world. That's what they're wanting, and the closest you can get to that is what they're going to gravitate to, and so that's why they sort of like the idea of a transracial adoption study. But the more
in theory, they would be great if we had a meta-analysis of a bunch of these things, and each racial group had like hundreds of participants and stuff. Then it's like, yeah, this would be fucking. And actually, there's something to say about that. Is that we should have that. There's no reason why we don't have that. Not a good reason why we don't have that sort of thing. Transracial adoptions are rare, but you know what? So are fucking adopted apart monozygotic twins, and we have tons of research on that. Right. So like, we have research on rare things. I think this is okay. This is me like putting on a bit of like an autistic conspiracy theory here, but I think that the way the Minnesota study turned out incentivized everyone else to not do one of those studies ever again. Because think about it, the Minnesota study, it started in like the 70s, and that's the most recent big thing we're talking about in terms of the transracial adoption literature. It's something from like 30 years ago. That should not be.
Yeah. Yeah. It started when did it from like 72 to 89 or something. But yeah, well, you know what? We could have it. It was funded by the Pioneer Fund, and I think what happened is basically the fact that the Minnesota Transracial Adoption Study had to be funded by the Pioneer Fund. I think is evidence that even back then, these researchers kind of knew. They knew that what they're saying wasn't true, and that I think Sandra Scar may have been, at least at that time, naive enough to actually believe that these race differences were not down to environment. But so you wrote an article a while ago where you were talking about all these researchers lying, and how you pointed to evidence that it's not them misunderstanding, it's knowingly lie, because you pointed them, but here they said this, and here they said this, so they obviously knew. So when they say this, they know it's a lie. So you have researchers knowingly lie, and the fact that researchers, even as far back as whenever the Minnesota Transracial Study was initiated, that nobody wanted to fund this kind of research, and it's not because there's a lack of funding for research like this, but they didn't want to fund the transracial stuff, I think is evidence that that at least at some level, the whole field kind of knows that they're frauds. What do you think?
Well, that's true, and that plays into. Did we already bring up the fact that Sandra Scar admitted to not being forthright with this?
No, we did not.
Okay, so that's something to definitely bring up, since there's an intersection of people lying and this particular study, is that I want to say around 97 or 98, there was an issue of the journal Intelligence that was dedicated to Arthur Jensen, and they were all writing the love pieces about Arthur Jensen. And Sandra Scar wrote one, and she talked about how she viewed Arthur Jensen as someone with extreme integrity, basically intellectual integrity. And she said that she wished that she had such integrity. And the example she gave of an instance in which she did not was when she pretended that her Minnesota Transracial Adoption Study was not consistent or did not support hereditarianism.
Right.
So that's actually, this is one of the, and I think that somewhat does speak to her integrity, actually. But the fact that in this case, she just literally said that this is what happened.
Yeah. And it's funny though. Like, I remember way back in the day when I first made my first ever race and IQ video, which I think was my first YouTube video. I'm not sure, but it was my first political YouTube video. And I remember posting just the table from the Minnesota Transracial Adoption Studies. Just, oh, obviously this supports hereditarianism. Clearly, like how could you look at that and come to any other conclusion? And I was like very naive back then. I thought, oh, like this is obviously the case, you know. And then I remember I got some commenter on my not Facebook, goddammit, my YouTube page, not the video, but back when, you know, your YouTube page had like comments on the front. And so, and this was a person saying that, bringing up Sandra Scar's criticisms of her own study. And I was actually shocked. This was a very rude awakening to hear someone actually interpret this study as not supporting hereditarianism. And I was like, this is not like, what? I was thrown for a loop. I don't think that's very effective because, like, when you literally just show that table, it's like, dude, come on, are you kidding me? Like, look. So,
yeah,
that's a funny thing. All right. Any other stuff? Oh, please direct us to where we can read Free Soil Party speeches. God damn it. I don't have that. I should have. See, that's the thing. That's the problem with these live streams is like you say a bunch of stuff and like when I make a video, it's like, all right, so I'm going to talk about this. I should have a link for this. Talk about this. I don't have a link. I saw someone linked me a bunch of stuff from archive.org where they were talking about it. What do you think
Someone
of a
asks,
one-child policy for non-whites? Let's not talk about that. All right.
Someone asks, could you address the idea that some parts of left-wing anti-white racial ideology and policies are the result of higher IQ? Could this contribute to explaining why Jews are represented in these areas? And so that's an interesting question. So firstly, social liberalism, like smart people tend to be libertarians basically, and social liberalism correlates with IQ. And you might say that explains why Jewish people are more likely than average to hold socially liberal views. Whether or not that explains the entire relation, I don't know, because I've never seen a study that compared Jewish to non-Jewish political ideology after controlling for IQ. But you would expect that to be a contributor to that. But it's also worth noting that because smart people tend to not be liberal across the board, but they tend to be libertarians, Republicans on average have higher IQs than Democrats do. That's true when you control for race. So you're only comparing white Republicans to white Democrats. But Jewish people are very overrepresented among Democrats. So what we can say is that their intelligence may explain why they're overrepresented among people who have socially liberal views, but it cannot explain why they're overrepresented among Democrats.
So why is the alt-right not trying to debate or challenge anyone associated Jordan Peterson? His fan base is ripe for the picking. I made a video to him, and certainly, like, I would be happy to respond to him. It's from Purple Dragon. So, message retracted. Uh-oh. Purple Dragon. Let's see. So what else?
We've degraded to the like answering random comments part of the stream. Very good.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Unless you have a topic you want to talk about. Sean, you should come on. Like when we say, like, because a few hours ago, that was Sean said, "Hey, what do you want to talk about on the stream?" And I was like, I don't know. And so that's how we do these streams. You guys are getting some backroom knowledge. You're seeing some,
well, okay. Well, let's give them some backroom knowledge. Then what happens is that I am not always on this stream, so I don't assume that I'm going to do it. And then Ryan messages me the night beforehand. So are you ready for the stream tomorrow?
John,
and then I'm like, I guess I can do the stream tomorrow. What do you want to talk about? And he's like, I don't know.
Hey, Sean, this is Sean playing the blame game here. Look, let's just accept that some mistakes.
It's a thing that happened.
That it was a thing. It was a thing that happened. We're moving into a new phase.
We're trimming some fat. We're trimming the fat, being the people that would only watch these streams if we had anything to talk about.
We're trimming the fat of only the people who watch these streams if they were any good. Yes. All right. So, we got some more questions here. Good. Some content. What do you think about the jawbone discovery in Israel that is 90 to 100,000 years old? Does it undermine the recent African origins hypothesis? I have no idea. So are you a pedophile yet? Isn't that's the hip new thing to do on the internet is to be a pedophile? No. What is your opinion on the YouTuber Libertarian Realist? Oh man, that is a name. Libertarian Realist. Wow. That's the guy that goes way back. Is he still making regular videos?
To my knowledge, the last thing he did was release his board game, which was around Christmas time.
Yeah. Oh, so not really. But yeah, Libertarian Realist goes way back. He goes way back to the 2010,
Well,
2011.
you used to make some quite aggressive videos to each other as well back in the day there.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, he started it. I think it was
Just
only
screaming about stuff. About like, well, we don't need to go into what, but it was some
Screaming?
funny stuff.
I forgot what I screamed about. Yeah. Yeah, I think we had an argument about, oh God, I remember one thing. We argued about like pan-separatism, and like I was sort of drawing like hypothetical carve-ups of the United States. And I think, we were talking about hypothetically like the rancher in Arizona and like what would happen to the white rancher in like southern Arizona. And I was like, well, he could leave or he could take his chances with La Raza. I don't know, but that's not like when we were making a deal, he can stay or he can leave. And if he stays, well, good luck. And Libertarian Realist was like really mad about that. It's like, how could this guy is saying that this white man should be just left to the whims of Mexicans or whatever, as if that was like an essential part of what I was advocating, that this white person be left to the ravages of the Mexican hordes or whatever. It was really, I remember it was really stupid. All hype. What is the most autistic thing you do on a regular basis? I don't know. Can you link the article you were talking about concerning the enemies in the media appointing your leaders? Yes. And this stream is so slow that I can actually link it in the stream. So there you go. Am I allowed? Does it allow that? Yes, it does. Okay.
It does allow it, yes.
Okay. Why are you guys so scared of Kevin Bird? Sean, why are you so scared of Kevin Bird?
It's because of his last name. I assume he has like crazy flying abilities and he's gonna like peck my eyes mid-debate or something.
Oh, Jesus. No, I'm so fucking scared.
No, it's just some guys. I don't know exactly who Kevin Bird. Well, I guess I have an idea now that he's a PhD student who says that he doesn't like race realist stuff. I tweeted at him today asking him to link me like some stuff that he considered representative of his viewpoint. I don't know if he's gotten back now to check the.
Yeah,
Twitter.
Sure. Who knows? Maybe next Tuesday we could have the debate, Sean Last and Kevin Bird. I'm not going to debate him. I'm not going to.
Why would I debate him and not you? What the fuck? That would be kind of like you're going to be the neutral mod.
Well, he doesn't know. Well, maybe he knows. I don't know. But if he doesn't know, we could I could pretend to be a neutral mod and sort of what. Also, Ryan, if you're no longer doing the gay thing, does that mean you'll be making white babies? Maybe. Sean Lass, I artistically spent an hour or two scanning Kevin's post history for his arguments and citations. I can send you a text file of it if you guys want. Yes.
Sure. That'd be good.
Are you on? This is the Momentai. Where would he send it? Are your DMs? What's your Twitter, Momentai?
Oh, is Kevin Bird? He's not the guy that that's not the PhD student that Destiny had on to critique my lead article, is it? If anyone knows, because then I would know who he is. I just wouldn't know that was his name.
There's other people that are talking in the chat who need to not be talking in the chat while Say you have kinetic orbital strike abilities. Who would you obliterate first? I would obliterate the YouTube channel Crash Course History. Like if I was in charge of YouTube, there's really only one channel that I would like straight up obliterate, that I would ban. That's Crash Course.
Yeah, the other one he got rid of years ago. But
that's pretty good.
One down, one to go. Okay, so they're saying that Kevin Bird is the same guy, in which case I do know who Kevin Bird is because I watched that stream and I even wrote like a response to it, but it was really long and autistic. So I decided not to actually make it.
I guess now you should make it.
But I know who he is. He's someone. Well, actually, I don't need to start making random like.
Oh, that is the guy. That is the guy. Yeah. Go ahead. Go say.
He would be fun to have a thing with. He strikes me as someone who is learning a lot of information fairly quickly and hasn't had a lot of time to carefully digest it. Let's say that's my armchair analysis of him based on watching one long video with him in it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on designer babies? My thoughts are that they're not coming as soon as people think they are. That is my thought. And it has to do with sort of like, I know that like it's easier to find, the easiest to find genes to influence intelligence are the ones that are going to be found the first. And so it's not like, oh, we found a few and it's just a matter of, a few years that we'll find all of them. Like, I know that's not the case. Sean knows more about that kind of stuff. But I don't know if Sean disagrees with me on that or what.
I was reading a comment and therefore didn't even hear what you said.
Oh, designer babies. I said I think they're farther off than most people think.
Well, you should look at Gwern has a very good post about embryo selection and the degree of efficacy that could have today, even for IQs. I think the limits and the result is basically that embryo selection today could increase the IQs of people by a couple points. So I think that the barriers to doing them are going to be more barriers of whether or not we're willing to allow it to be done than barriers regarding like just the actual ability to do them, because that seems to be coming in at least for intelligence. Like I follow the intelligence stuff a lot more closely than I follow other things, and the genetic architecture of intelligence is surprisingly well suited for this. Like you have a lot of non-additive effects and such in personality that make it a lot harder to get the sequencing down for and things like that. So it'll be sooner for some traits than others.
Yeah. Non-additive effects means like basically additive effects is where you can literally just look at the genes and say, oh yeah, this one, add up those effects and it's going to be plus 3 IQ points or minus 2 IQ points or whatever. That's an additive effect. Non-additive effects is basically the interactions between the genes. So, John, you need to talk down to your audience. Okay. Alt-hype, your thoughts on Wikipedia. Wikipedia's article on the heritability of IQ is very good. Surprisingly good.
One person asks, oh, go ahead.
Oh, where are Ryan's hot takes on the Starbucks controversy? I don't know what's to say. Like, like Starbucks has operated on false pretenses. They thought these monsters were actually like reasonable people with grievances, and so they're saying, "Oh, we'll just be nice to them, and they'll be nice to us." Like, no, they don't understand what they're dealing with. That's all. I mean, you know what these anti-white loons are. You know what they're about. So, okay, go ahead, Sean.
Someone asks, what % of IQ variance is explained by currently known SNPs and copy number variance? And the best results we're getting right now, last time I looked, was around 9% of the variance. So an overall correlation of around 0.3. Now, of course, finding the specific SNPs and using them in apologenic scores is quite difficult because of problems concerning statistical power. You need samples that are absolutely astronomical to do this sort of thing. That's becoming more possible as technology becomes cheaper. That's comparable, a nice little talking point is that's roughly as much variance in IQ as is explained by parental socioeconomic status. That is what the current polygenic scores that will get surely better as technology becomes cheaper. In terms of copy number variance, the results concerning and copy number variance are we'll just call them a specific kind of rare mutation. Copy number variance for people that don't know. Copy number variants, the results are mixed as to whether or not they do explain variance in intelligence. There's some reason to think they would, especially there's some theoretical reasons. If you think that intelligence is a general fitness indicator, then you would strongly suspect that they would. But on the other hand, there is evidence that some class of rare mutations seems to explain quite a lot, because you had this okay, well, that would be actually that would take like several minutes to explain, and I think that would be a little boring. So we'll just say there was a paper published last year. David Hill was the lead author, that used a new methodology, change in the way they do SNP heritability, that allowed it to include the effects of rare mutations, and that showed a very substantial increase in the amount of heritable variation capturable by those SNP-based methods.
How many feds do you think are actually in the movement today? Doesn't matter to me. I don't care about feds, because feds are typically looking for like actual crimes and terrorist acts, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm as square as they come. So I don't really know or care about feds. More concerned about like shit libs pretending that's actually a concern, because they can find, because the thing is, if they record like everything you say, they can always decontextualize stuff. And another problem, like if you have a secret recording of someone, like even if they're saying what they say publicly, like they can find me in private saying something that I've said in my videos a whole bunch of times, but then record it like it's an expose of a private recording. That would still make it look like it's bad, or like something I don't want people to see, or that it's actually scandalous when it's actually not. That's the problem. Like anybody who gets a private recording and say, "Oh, it's a private recording that Ryan Falk doesn't want you to hear," and stuff like that. Some people are asking about. They've been asking about the All Nations Party, and I think that's a good term, but I think it's almost like you need two political parties, which sounds like it's like you need. I mean, you need like the All Nations Party, which is not like I don't believe in like a real political party that competes with Republicans or Democrats, but it's just like a political group, political action group. And so you have the All Nations Party, which is like basically the pan-separatist group, and then you have the Free Soil Party, which is the white advocacy group, and then the All Nations Party is basically an umbrella. It's basically a political front of several groups. And the purpose of and the thing is, one issue with the All Nations Party would have to be party discipline, like really harsh party discipline. Like if you're in sort of like a convention, or not, I don't know if you would even have conventions, but if you're like doing some All Nations Party function, and like you have some guy talking about basically saying his ideology, he's a libertarian and he's talking about communists or whatever, like you got to have strong men take that guy and physically remove him, like no questions asked. So something about the All Nations Parties, because it's such a combustible political alliance, or alliance may be too strong of a term. It's such a volatile political front group that it's going to have to be really draconian in terms of enforcing party discipline, and has to be willing to throw people out like immediately without question. So I recently read a theory from a PhD economist where he asserts that environmental factors are not what's holding Africa back. Would you have an interest in discussing this? Sure. Why don't you tweet at me on Twitter, and I'll open DMs and we can talk from there. I'll open DMs to you, John Smith. John Smith. Nativist Party. Do you think Sargon is a good dino dad raising his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend's dinosaur? I tweeted the disorganized. Or to you guys. Anti-bully party. Sean, did you see that? The bully hunters? Did you see the bully hunters?
Yes, the Midicor video.
That was so awesome. Could you imagine, like, you're playing a stream, it's like, this guy's calling me names, and then you see like bully hunter something. That would just be so, I don't know. Like, you know, that anybody who does that is just gonna be like bullied harder. There's so much harder. And it's funny, like even on their stream, even in the little setup, apparently the bully hunter died like once or twice before killing the bully. It's like, what do you think about alt isolationism? Isolated nations for different political groups instead of mixing them together. That's not the worst name. Isolationism sounds as a vaguely negative connotation, but it's not a terrible connotation. That's not the worst. That's not the worst. I could think of a lot worse names. Opinion on your race mixing tweet being banned. It wasn't banned.
What was this tweet? I don't think I saw this.
Oh
wait, if it wasn't banned, is it one you took down?
No, I didn't take it down because remember. Oh yeah, this is another thing. There's basically somebody. Okay, I posted a tweet that I probably shouldn't have posted where I basically said race mixing is worse than bestiality. So now the problem is like, and of course I can defend that intellectually. I could say what is the effect of bestiality? Nothing, unless you get some sort of weird disease. The effect is no effect. It's like you had sex with an animal. That's pretty fucking gross. The end. Whereas race mixing, you know, I can bring up, I can tell you that, you know, you're much more likely to have spousal abuse. You're much more likely to have a divorce. You know, your offspring are going to feel more isolated. Like there's all sorts of problems that come from mixed marriages. And these are not just correlational effects that like trashy people tend to have mixed marriages. No, like there was a study that I referenced on this where it's actually the people in the mixed marriages were of higher socioeconomic status compared to the same race groups. And it's not just it's not just comparing to whites, it's comparing to non-white monoracial couples as well. So like it's very clearly an effect of the racial difference of the couple. So, and the thing is, I can sort of intellectually defend that, but I should not have said that on Twitter because it's like on Twitter you only have so many characters and it's really like you know, and so the nuance doesn't really get through. So that's a problem. But somebody said on my Twitter, he said oh, that you should probably take down that tweet, Ryan. And I'm just thinking, oh, just take it down. Oh my sweet child. Just take it down. Like apparently you haven't been on the internet very long. You don't get to just take things down, buddy. My Twitter feed is almost certainly completely archived by someone. Okay, so it's not getting taken down. Now, as it happens, I have a program that deletes any tweet I have that's over 7 days old. Simply, and it's not because I'm trying to hide it. It's because I don't want people trawling through old tweets, finding something and getting my account banned for it. My account may be banned eventually anyway, but this is just sort of a precaution about this. But it's not like I'm trying to hide things I said previously because like it's all archived and anything that people see that they go, oh, I'm going to use this against them in the future, they're going to archive it. So it doesn't, there's no hiding like things you said on the internet, or especially me. We've said Aska is a shrieking Jewish. Will you throw down the glove? Aska is a cartoon character. What happened to Toy Story video? The Toy Story video has a lot of copyrighted content, and my channel is currently being reviewed. So that's my concern.
Which is a shame because for those that don't know, the Toy Story video was this great video that Ryan uploaded in which he revealed like a lot of the most comprehensive and he analyzed a lot of the bedrock assumptions of his worldview. And it was probably the most profound video Ryan's ever made. But unfortunately, it had copyrighted content and had to get taken down.
Well, it was so profound. It was so profound that I didn't want to put it on my main channel because I think it would cause a lot of it would just be a profoundness overload in a lot of people. And so I wanted to put it just on this channel so that it would be limited to the really hardcore people.
Especially because it was in that video when Ryan told people what he really thinks about Jews.
It's at the very end. I think it's about it's at the very end where I talk about the Jews that you guys should check out. But I think I should public that video now because I think I'm just going to use Streamlabs because I was looking at what you could do in Streamlabs and it's like I think I'm just going to use Streamlabs. Like, and also I don't have to worry as much about being demonetized on this channel if I use Streamlabs. So I think that's what I'm just going to do. I think I'm just going to use Streamlabs. So, in fact, you know what? In fact, I'm making that video public while this stream is going on, so you guys can see.
Holy crap! Live action content.
Live content. Here it is. I understand.
Guess anybody somewhere at the very beginning asked if this was a pre-scripted or like a pre-recorded rather stream.
Oh, because we don't interact with the audience. That's why.
Because at the beginning we actually had a little bit of something to say, and so for a minute had the veneer of like something that was planned ahead of the time.
Yeah, but that veneer went down pretty quick. So.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know. We've been on for an hour and 50 minutes. I think we're about done here. Although there's still 300 people watching this thing, so I guess
blacks have low IQ.
Yeah, that is the alternative hypothesis. If people say, "Hey guys, I think black people are smart." Oh, really? I have an alternative hypothesis. So
I'm looking at the notes the guy tweeted at us about this bird fellow. And the arguments do seem similar to what he made on Destiny's channel. So it's a little like above average.
No, actually, this whole thing actually is pre-scripted, but we're just so smart that we're actually able to predict every single comment that's made by the audience. We're able to.
This is what high IQ looks like.
This is what high IQ. We're able to emulate all of their minds. We're able to run we don't even know these individual persons. We've had no contact with these individual persons, but we're able through a complex chain of reasoning, able to emulate inferred minds that will come onto this stream and know exactly what questions they're going to ask and what word choice they're going to use because we actually read off the words they actually use. That's how good we are at this. All right. Okay, I think we're done. I think we jumped the shark there.
All righty.
All righty. So bring it in. I think we're done with the stream. Bring it in, guys. Go Bobcats. All right, we're done.